Hey everyone, Tactics here, bringing you a guide to the Amalgamation Chamber on Mythic difficulty, where I'll go through the changes in this fight moving from Heroic into Mythic difficulty, and then how we handled them while walking you through our very first kill of the boss. Now, let's not waste any more time here and just talk about the changes where, in terms of actual abilities here in this first phase of the fight, there's nothing new you need to deal with, but there are some pretty significant changes to a couple of the mechanics, namely the stacking debuffs, blazing heat, and corrupting shadow for the various bosses. Just fast forwarding a second here, you can see these debuffs now have no duration, so the only way to clear them is by touching someone that has the opposite debuff as you, and doing so will now deal a splash of damage within 5 yards of you. So that means that you can't just have your entire raid kind of stack up and clear them. You do need to find like an individual partner to clear with, and then on top of that, you'll then get a stacking dot based on the number of stacks you cleared. So if I clear with 2 fire stacks, for example, I'll get 2 stacks of this fire dot, and that's basically just a relatively small, not really dangerous ticking dot that comes with a 10% fire or shadow damage increase depending on whichever debuff you cleared for a 20-second duration. So honestly, the actual dot damage there, like I said, not really scary. The main thing to worry about is that damage amp and taking more of that damage type while you have that pretty significant damage amp on you. In terms of how we actually handle this, well, we actually split our raid into 3 different groups with an even number of player in each group, and I'm sure you're wondering, why 3 groups? There's only 2 bosses to hit. Well, here's the thing. As you see here in the middle of the group, there are a bunch of specs in the game that can actually hit both bosses. So they can multi-dominate warlocks. We've got a boomkin and we've got a shadow priest in the middle, 4 of them. And basically, standing here, they're able to cleave onto both bosses because, ranged, well, we love ranged. So they're doing that. Basically, these guys, there's 4 of them, so they're each going to clear with one other person here. So you got the priest and the druid, we've got the 2 warlocks clearing together, and then for the rest of the raid, we want to make sure it's an even split, so we have an even amount on the right and the left side, as these guys are basically counting as DPS on both sides. In terms of clearing assignments, outside of the people in the middle, we didn't really have like hard clearing assignments. I'm sure you could. For example, you could have these 4 melee clear with each other, the 2 range clear with each other, and then you can have this Holy Pally clear with a tank. That's obviously pretty intuitive anyways, so that's why we didn't assign them. But if you really wanted to, you could hard assign partners to clear debuffs with. So these are the assignments. One thing to note, especially important, is the immunity split. So I'll talk about that in a second, but basically meteors are ideally immune, which means you'd need 3 or 4 immunities in your comp depending on how fast you phase into P2. For us, in our very first kill, we needed 4, but basically every kill since then we've needed 3. So we have 2 rogues here on the left side. Each can cloak a meteor by themselves, so that solos 2 meteors, all of the left side meteors. The right side meteors, we have me as the prot paladin. A prot paladin on their own can bubble taunt and then spell warding the 2 meteors on that side. So that is kind of why I'm split up from the rogues. It's a minor thing, but it can reduce a decent chunk of the overall raid damage going out in this phase if people just don't need to worry about soaking meteors. So keep that in mind as well if you have enough immunities to actually do that kind of split. Now, going into this actually itself here, in terms of like when we actually swapped and how we dealt with it, basically here we would swap after the coalescing void cast. So this will happen just after the meteor. So you're going to standard, heroic, normal, whatever mechanics here. The meteor is going to come out here in just a few seconds. Let's fast forward a tiny bit. So the meteor comes out. I'm immune soaking this by myself. No one else is in it. And then the coalescing void, you see, just started over here. So it's going, it's detonating. Now both tanks and only the tanks will go, move towards the center, never cross that middle line of ranged in the middle here because we don't want to accidentally clear. And then we'll taunt swap the bosses. The bosses will just run to the opposite sides. And so now we'll be in a spot where we can just all have both debuffs, which means we can all clear with literally anyone on this side. So you don't actually need to clear with someone from the opposite side. You just wait to swap the bosses, and then you clear with someone on your side. That's why we have an even number of players in every single group, so that everyone has a partner. And the fight from here just kind of repeats. As you see too, I had a stacks of fire and shadow debuff. So when we cleared, I got both the fire dot and the shadow dot. So keep that in mind as well. And it's the exact same. So basically you can see from the other perspective now, 14 seconds on the meteor. Let's move forward a little bit here. Meteor is going to go out. Coalescing void is going out now. There's a Coalescing Void. Meteor's about to detonate. We're waiting for this void to go off, and now we'll go and we'll swap the bosses as soon as that Coalescing Void is done, because you want to give healers a little bit of breathing room from that Coalescing Void burst of damage to get them back up before you swap the bosses, as that can also do a burst of damage as well, right? So that's basically what you're doing here. Rinse and repeat for the rest of this phase. And like I said, again, Meteor Soak is going to go out. I'm going to Spell Warding, wait for this Coalescing Void to blow up, and then we'll move across and we'll swap the bosses again, making sure you don't touch any of the people in the middle. 4 fire stacks. Now we all have shadow stacks, and anyone on our side can clear with anyone waiting there. Boom, cleared, done like that. Now, transitioning into P2 here. So as you see, everyone has circles around them. Basically, that 5-yard burst from clearing someone that I just talked about happens on the phase transition around every single player. So obviously just don't be stacked up here. Your stacks are also going to get cleared here as well. So you're going to see like this is going to blow up, and I'm going to get 2 stacks of the shadow dot because I have 2 stacks of the shadow thing now. Exactly how that works. And now in this phase, there is, again, almost this exactly the same. There is one new ability here, and that is Shadow and Flame. Basically, it deals a 6-yard burst around every single player, so you want to make sure you spread out. And then half the raid gets that Blazing Heat debuff from P1, and half the raid will get the Corrupting Shadow debuff. And basically, this will just increase in the stack count every 5 seconds. So there it is, boom. Everyone AoEs, so it's pretty big damage. You see the melee stack actually got chunked there because we were not spread. So just rewinding again to look at that. Basically, boom, big explosion on the entire raid. So you want to be spread for it, otherwise you chunk each other. And then you want to find a partner to clear with relatively quickly here, because this will amp up the longer you hold on to it. So if you're holding this for a very, very long time, it's going to be problematic. You're going to get increasing damage the longer you hold it. So ideally just clear ASAP, find a buddy. That is like your #1 priority. Whenever that goes out, you spread, then you immediately find a buddy of the opposite color. Unlike something like Anduin, but Blasphemy mechanic, you will not blow up if you touch someone of the same color. So that's fine. Don't worry about running through people. Just immediately go try and find another buddy of the opposite color. As you see here, we can use the lock gate every other cast of that big AoE that goes out. You will need to soak the meteor in this phase because it has a minimum soak of 5 people. Otherwise, it wipes the raid. So you can't immune the soaks here. So just have everyone you can run into it and then immediately run away, because that's when the AoE happens. We don't have a lock gate for this one, so we're just going to use a speed boost when this goes out. And actually, here's the Mythic mechanic again, right? We spread out for these. It shoots out tornadoes and immediately does the Mythic mechanic. And you see we had a much better spread there. No one got instantly almost murdered. And then we have the soaks. And then it's the meteor plus the runaway right after the tank combo here. And so again, everyone's going to try and get into this tank little soak here on the tanks. And then we're going to immediately just speed and run away out of this circle. Obviously, we don't have access to the lock gate for this one because it's still on cooldown, but it'll be up, and you just basically just ping pong here. P2 is just kind of a dance until you defeat the boss. That is it for this guide. Relatively quick one here. Hopefully it helps you out, and if it did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like it, including Mythic raid guides for every single boss just like this one. Any questions at all, feel free to drop those down in the comments below, or you can come stop by my Twitch channel at Tactics. Ask me there. I share my Mythic progression as well if you want to check that out. So do stop by. Otherwise, thanks everyone so much for watching. Shout out to all of my supporters over on Patreon. It really does mean a lot. And I'll see you all in the next video.